Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Battle Spirits Saga video. And today we have the top 8 list from the Netherlands Grand Open, or the first Grand Open of False Gods. And, well, it does look very similar, doesn't it, I guess, as it were. But this is probably the one part I will just have to get on my soapbox for a little bit before we get into it too much. But ultimately, because of, I guess, largely EX01 and how impactful the Elementals turned out to be, as well as some various, things within the set 2 design space, King Vulture, if we want to really lean into the other side of this problem. But this is going to boil down to basically 3 different decks until the issue is addressed. So you are either going to have your decks that are aiming to beat depths, as in it does not stay on the board, which is going to be a lot of your red decks. You have the decks that are going to be splashing depths because it is just too good. I've gone as far as putting it in yellow lists now, and I have to say 4 Blessed Cathedral and 4 Depths is just kind of where you have to be right now if you want yellow to be at all competitive. And then, of course, the third option is going to be I'm just going to kill you before you can stabilize on a Depths, right? So turn 2, turn 3 is something like white aggro. And as we're going to go over these lists today, keep that in mind, and you'll see exactly those 3 different, again, oversimplifying a little bit, but generally speaking, when you're building a deck for the upcoming Grand Opens, make sure you are one of these 3 decks, because that is how the format is going to basically evolve until something changes, just because, again, of how good it is. Yes, I think that there is a very strong consideration to ban depths. Do not limit it, because limiting is really just going to make the high roll situations feel even worse. I think it just needs to go overall. However, there's also the other side of this to acknowledge that Battle Spirits and Battle Spirits Saga, by nature of the game itself, right, we have a lower life total, all things considered. They are meant to be high-powered and fast games. However, green and white generally never get draw effects, or if they do, they're related to things like hand reversal in green, or as we've seen in white, you have things like the Elephant, which is going to draw 3 and ramp you 3, right? It's a bit more limited, where all the other colors have significantly more options. So I do think that there's a point of this consideration to be in the focus of, we really do need to get some more support in set 3 for these green and white decks, that if we were to hit depths, they're going to need something to fill that void. And I will admit, as someone who's been playing almost exclusively green decks, because I've been really trying to make something work since the set launched, it is a night and day difference between playable, borderline playable, to completely unplayable when you put depths in or out of a deck. And let's be fair, if you look at what green wants to be doing, it is a very natural combo to what Netherworld Depths enables. So those two are a match made in heaven. However, when you look at the impact on the rest of the meta overall, going back to the 2 different Grand Open, or I guess the online event and the Grand Open being the Pro Tour, I should specify. Before this, 6 of the 8 top 8 decks were Netherworld Depths decks. And of course, if we look at this top 8 from Netherlands, we have 4, because we got to count Axe Spider as well. 4 Depths decks in the top 8, and 3 that say, hey, I want to try to remove your depths as much as possible by running up to 6, if not more, counting the sideboard, Nexus-based removal. So, yes, it is early in the format. Yes, this is just the first major event for the Grand Open, but I am going to go on the record to say that I would not be surprised as this meta continues if the decks that do well ultimately fall into one of those 3 categories. So again, I'm not saying you have to play purple, but I am saying be very mindful of those 3 different decks that I had mentioned, or archetypes, just to grossly simplify, if I may, right? You're going to have the decks that want to destroy depths, which those ones are going to be locked into red just by what red is doing, right? You're going to have the decks that are splashing depths, which is going to be from purple to literally everything that could do it is going to be doing it. And then you have the decks that want to just go under it, which is going to be things like white aggro or green aggro, and I guess technically 2-crossed aggro, if that goes anywhere. I think that one's a little bit more questionable, because depths is really good in that list because it just cycles itself and gives everything curse. You get the idea, right? You want to just be more aggressive. So all that out of the way, I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but I know that people have been giving me crap because they think that I'm pro depths and pro Axe Spider. I'm not. I want to see more results first, and I want to see how the meta is going to go. And there's also a very, 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 very big difference between white decks with and without depths. And if anyone's been playing since the launch event, it's very clear the power level that exists today that we've seen in the Axe Spider list from the Pro Tour and the one that we're going to talk about briefly, going all the way back to the launch event. And yes, it did win in the original launch event and then completely fell off for a short period of time. Essentially, White really does need some help outside of, well, the Depths that's just carrying it right now. So if and when Depths does get hit, yes, White is going to get heavily punished for it, but I'm sure we're going to get some more mecha things like Donar, with hopefully being a little bit better. They will get other draw engines available to them. We just kind of have to wait and see. So up first, we have our champion of the event, Altu Grown, and hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly, but playing the white-purple Axe Spider list, or, you know, the white splash purple, whatever you want to call it. Generally speaking, this is the list that we saw at the Pro Tour event, slightly updated with set 2. We had a couple different considerations to have here with the Peggy Sion making an appearance in case you probably saw some green aggro. We have the Aegis, which is obviously wasn't at the Pro Tour because it's set 2 card, right, to just heal and draw a card most often. And then it's really nice that whenever it's exhausted, you can bounce a 5 or less, gives you a little bit more angle against the curse style of decks, but ultimately, you know, just playing the good old Axe Spider stuff. But what's really, really important about this one is the 4 of Derm Dyna, and I so badly hope this matchup gets somewhere on YouTube because apparently the finals, and I gotta give a huge shout out to Sync Lyric for giving us the updates, but it got to game 3. Both players were waiting for that big top deck moment. Could be anyone's game, and at just the pivotal moment, they were able to get that top deck Derm Dyna to secure the win. So it went all the way to a game 3, and there was a lot of back and forth from what it sounds like, but you know, what better way to win an entire event with just an absolutely insane top deck? So again, huge congrats there. And then of course, just from some sideboarding options, we have even more Feral Slash, just some good anti-aggro or anti-yellow, you know, more copies of Core Theft, Rocket City, that's all expected. And then what a lot of people have been doing for at least the white aggro matchups, right? The 4 of Gregamar in the sideboard, just so it's like, hey, you can't bounce this, you know, you have to at least deal with it somehow. And of course, Peggy Sion will give you a little bit more of that anti-white aggro range because it can block while exhausted if they try to go too wide, right? So they have to remove it, sort of thing. So overall, I do think that Axe Spider is still going to be a very strong deck that we get to see in the meta. And I do think there is a world where even as the deck evolves, we will see more Axe Spider in the future. But it is really just a good mid-range disruptive threat that can protect one of your white Nexus cards. So it is a card that I would expect to see more and more of as future sets go on. But, you know, when and if Depths get hits, I think the power level, you know, really does shift because then it goes, hey, White doesn't have a lot of good draw options. They have Elephant, but then you can splash like Greatwood Castle for game 2 and game 3 to shut off Elephants. And then it becomes a mini game of like, okay, how am I going to remove their Nexus? Do I want to set up a Dream Bomb turn so then I can force them to block and kill my Elephant, right? There's a lot more interaction that can happen, and I think the game naturally shifts into a much more balanced perspective in the different sideboarding options we have, right? A lot of the strength in this game, I feel, very strongly resides in the sideboard and how you can plan for a few things. But as it exists today with how strong Depths is, it can just completely run away with some of these matchups. But again, huge shout out for the 4 of Derm Dyna. I know there's been some consideration for, you know, are we still playing Elk? Are there other things that we want to like look forward to? But I think this is still a list that can evolve quite a bit. If we think about the Pro Tour, if we look at this version of the list, right, there is going to be some stock things, right? You play your Elementals, you play your Axe Spider, you play your Depths. You have to play some number of your unblockable or burn damage over the top, which is going to be Derm Dyna or Elk. You always want to play 4 Elephants because, again, you need another draw engine available for it, and it just ramps you, right? It's just good. Like, Elephant is even good in, like, green-white ramp. I think it has a very nice spot. So all that makes sense, and then it just comes down to, you know, what do our spells look like? How much of the block stuff do we want? How much bounce stuff do we want? So overall, very solid list. Huge congrats again to the champion, and really looking forward to seeing, you know, where this kind of evolves from there. And moving on to our runner-up, we have Leo on Pterosaurs. Yes, the king of the set 1 format. Didn't go anywhere, right? So, you know, by design, as Battle Spirits continues to grow, we've talked about this on the channel previously, we have these block style of formats where just expect Pterosaurs and Star Dragons, right, as like the 2 key things from Red to continue to get support for the next few sets. And of course, we know that Nova is making a comeback in set 4. So good old classic Red. We talked about this, that, hey, you just get to remove Nexus. You have cheap, efficient, confront-based spirits to remove stuff. And while Nexus Hazard has been turned out to be pretty good. However, you will see the shift that has happened from the much lower to the ground, aggressive in nature Pterosaurs deck, which, to be fair, this can still be very aggressive, to a more mid-range or top-end shift for Pterosaurs. Now, it's not a control deck, so it's not going to be as heavy on the top end. Gigano Rex still gets all of his reductions, right? But it just goes to show that this style of deck can shift itself to be a more, go tall multi-attack style of deck instead of just rush everything out, play all the cheap big guys you can. Obviously, Bearded Eagle and Dilophosa still being very good, but the new TP promo here did make an appearance. And then, of course, Sortosaurus being its multi-attacker just really helps out with the format overall. So, hey, red is good. I'm expecting to see more of this in Tulsa. And if you're going to Tulsa, make sure that you have this on your radar. Now, I will say the thing that I absolutely love about this list is the one of Leon. It was just so spicy. I got to play with this over the past weekend where I went to my local store championship, and I didn't get to live the full dream where someone had like 2 or 3 of them on the board, but it still felt very good to resolve Leon's when summoned ability, because you get to deny that draw and remove a chump blocker, and it was quite relevant. And then on top of that, right, if they don't answer it, you go, okay, here's this guy. He's now a draw engine, which is something that, Pterosaurs, to be fair, did want, because if you don't get to stabilize early with a battlefield and get a couple extra hits in, right, you do get to kind of run out of gas eventually, where now Leon can become a reasonable attacker who is going to draw you a card every turn. So that, again, leans more into like the big red style of stuff where it's not, by its own element, a mid-ranger control card that's going to run away with some big red deck, but just a good sideboard consideration that you can, again, if you're expecting a lot of elemental style decks or a lot of the yellow decks in the format, Leon's perfectly fine as a main deck inclusion. Definitely something that I would respect as a sideboard at minimum, but I really, really loved the one of here from Leo. Going on from there, we have the traditional red spells we've come to expect and love, or hate, depending on what side of the table you're on, right? Starblessed Draw, Burning Forest, great stuff. 2 of Dream Bomb. Need to be able to respect the Axe Spiders, Derm Dynas, Maduke, right? Just good old catch-all cards. And then the one that I know some of our early red lists were cutting or just didn't have as many copies of was Volcanic Break. And you even see the 4th copy here in the sideboard. With Dual Eagle still running around and now Lamorak being a thing you want to consider, getting the Volcanic Break has just been very, very important and something I would still consider running in a lot of lists. It does hit quite a bit for you to help you kind of climb out of some matchups. But overall, right, red still being red, Rex is still very good, and I would expect to see this list evolve as the meta goes on and as we see more of these red decks kind of pop up over time. Again, within it, looking forward to set 3 and set 4. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Star Dragons or Nova that starts to pop up as well as this format continues to develop. Going to the sideboard, talking about a wide open meta and not sure what you're going to bring, you want to be protected from multiple sides, right? So the Andromeda, more Nexus removal, Derm Dyna, you want to go against the white control decks, cool, I'll have unblockable stuff. This is what we saw way back in the launch event, so spoiler, that's how you still win against white sometimes. And then the one that I really have been liking a lot is the Castle Keep, the green Nexus that just shuts off one destroyed effects. Getting to turn off an Elephant was really, really strong when I got to test it this weekend, and just turning off, other when destroyed effects that we see a lot of yellow decks taking a point of, like, not that red needs a lot of help into yellow if you've ever played that matchup, but still something to consider, right? It is a very good card for what it wants to be doing. And then just some more good catch-alls like Bloody Rain and Suppression for the aggro matchups, Core Theft and Dream Bomb for just a problematic Derm Dynas or Madukes if you can catch them. But again, with Core Theft itself, when you're not playing depths or have a bunch of purple cards like Black Lance or other kind of hand refillers, it can be very expensive to play in non-purple decks, but that said, it is still a very good card and one of the best, instant speed removal, even if it comes with a great cost. So overall, again, I really like this list. We had 3 Pterosaurs overall. I think this is very well positioned for the meta overall and something you should absolutely consider. Again, because you just get to have 6 Nexus removals, and as the format exists today, this is still a very good thing to consider. And again, if you want to be really spicy, start working on those Nova lists, but I think 4 Burning Forts and 2 Nexus Hazard is a very safe place to be with where the meta is going right now. From there, we have our top 4, Ayumu Saiki. This is our friend from a previous EU champion, was on the channel for the Champions Corner, and they brought back the good old Nemesis midrange. This is something that we've seen pop up quite a bit, and it's something that's going to continue to pop up because, again, one, you are playing Depths and Black Lands, just give you a ton of card draw, but honestly, the big win here is Nemesis and Lamorak, just getting infinite value. And this is one of those decks I personally, in my very, very strong opinion, I think Nemesis is the best purple deck in the set 2 meta, full stop, period, no discussion point. Like, as someone who's been playing a lot more of the Nemesis list lately, again, as a possible consideration for Tulsa, I was like, wow, I can do just what feels like some very broken stuff. Or it's just like random draw 3, pop the 0 cost back to my hand sort of thing, right? Like, that feels great. So I'm so happy as someone who has loved Nemesis and has loved the Shadow archetype from set 1. I have a ton of videos on this. I'm on record a ton saying how much I love Nemesis, how that's my favorite purple X rare. I love this. I think this list is also like super solid without depths. Like, you just go 4 Rotting Swamp, which then also loops your Black Lances and your Maduke. Like, this is a list that if depths gets hit tomorrow, like, you're like, all right, that's fine. Here's all my other good stuff that I can still run in this deck, right? Like, it's absolutely gas. And I think there's, you know, some consideration, like, how many Beldegors do we want? Are we playing Mordred? Are we not playing Mordred? Are we playing Ant-Man Worker? Because, well, spoiler, I am. Now, after I've, like, tried lists with and without, I think Ant-Man's absolutely insane. Getting the extra cores is great. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, there's no Curse Dragon. There's no Bishop, right? I think those are fine for sideboard. I have just fallen completely in love with the Shadows archetype. And again, Nemesis is a Shadows. For those that don't know, the Shadow archetype is literally Nemesis, the PAL, Dark Knight, Lamorak, Beldegor, technically, because you can sack something, bring back Beldegor, all that good stuff, right? So that all kind of comes together, and it's something that most likely will get more support in set 3 as well. So I finally found a purple deck that I absolutely love, and I really can't wait to see what other support it gets. And then also the last thing I got to mention here, the only one of Maduke, but Maduke I think is also just very, 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 very well positioned in the current meta, and something I would look forward to seeing more lists play. So maybe you just shift over the one Dark Knight Pal into a second copy of Maduke. But, you know, I think the strip 7 cores ability and drawing even more cards if it gets to stay on the board is really, really good. So huge shout out to Ayumu again for getting top 4. I know you would have loved the back-to-back champion spot, but I think this is an absolutely stellar list. And one, truthfully, I assume that we're going to be seeing a lot of in Tulsa next weekend. Moving on from there, we have our top 8 now with Francis Logan. I believe how you pronounce it. Again, I super apologize if I ever butcher your name on the channel. Feel free to correct me in the comments. But now this one is the more typical core control, right? We have the Bishop, we have the Maduke, we have the Curse Dragon, we have the Forest for finding our combo pieces, right? We're heavy on Lamorak. And this is where, you know, we've gotten a little bit of separation between what does purple mid-range look versus what does purple control look like. And I think this is only going to further separate itself as more sets come out. But ultimately, yes, in set 2, we got Thorn Prison, which has been a huge pickup for like the control style of decks. Also helps for clearing damage. It gets you to draw a card off depths. Thorn Prison is just a true MVP of this format, and I think a lot of people have recognized it as such. So I really do like more of the purple. If you're going like this heavy on the control side, I really like splashing a little bit more green just to have those green pips. Ant-Man Worker has been, again, very, very insane. And I think there's some other, you know, I like having a 2 of Scoops in the list, or Scoop Owl, I think is I call him Mr. Scoop, so I'm sorry. The Green Owl TP promo, right? I think he could definitely have a fine spot in this list as well, just because he can be a double blocker, or basically just become a Thorn Prison on a body for what it wants to be doing. Yes, you do have to sacrifice it, but that is totally fine. And then again, spoiler, it's a 4-drop. It gets back Beldegor. So why not get back Beldegor and then kill the thing that you just tapped with Scoop's tap effect, right? That all sounds great. So I'm really curious to see where more of these kind of develop as the set goes on. But again, I think straight purple is fine and purple green is fine. It just kind of comes down to where do you as the player view the different tech options that you can fit in. And that's what I really like about set 2. There are so many, well, set 2 purple, I guess. The other ones are probably not as much there yet, but at least with purple, there's so much more deck building consideration where you could just play 60 cards. Like, there's just that many cool and good things you can be doing in purple. Obviously, you want to draw your depths more consistently, so you probably don't run 60, at least not until blue enters the meta and we get mill. But overall, again, I really like this list as well. I think purple, again, maybe it's just me and where I've been testing lately, but I do think purple overall is the best color in set 2. It just got so much for it that it really does feel kind of ahead of the others. And then, of course, if purple is good, well, yellow can't really ever be good. So we are just going to sit here and wait to see what set 3 gives us for us yellow enjoyers. But again, with blue around the corner, if blue becomes very good, yellow can help keep it in check. So I also just can't wait till we have all 6 colors in the game, because that's when like the first true meta will be kind of fleshed out. And then I probably should say like set 4, because that's the first set where everybody gets equal support. I think that'll be a really good time. But, you know, green is clearly the newest addition for set 2, and we're really going to have to wait and see where that kind of develops as more sets and more of the meta evolves. Because, again, remember, we saw set 1 go through a lot of crazy changes. Plus, we have the lore set in, like, what, 6 weeks at the time of recording? 5 weeks at the time of recording this? So there's even more changes that could be coming down the road. So very much looking forward to it. And then last but not least, we have Aaron David Hadfield with the good old white aggro. Yes, you are splashing green for the map Butterfly, because it is just a 0 cost free attacker, and as well as the Ant Strike back that says, hey, you killed and blocked my guy. Well, here's a couple more. Deal with it. So I do like the opportunity here to kind of extend your damage. The one thing that's not here that I think is a very fair consideration is also Leaf Wolf, because it's just a good card to otherwise extend your damage again. But otherwise, it is just, you know, the aggro deck of the format. And as I mentioned, kind of the last rounding out one here, that says, hey, I just want to clear your board or clear this game before you have a chance to stabilize with depths. Can I do it in my top 10 cards, right? And all games have a very aggressive deck like this. And it is interesting to have both the aggro side of the format and the axe spider side of the format, that we have to respect both of them. So very curious to see if more people lean on this. As again, Valkyrie Mist is just super good at, you know, surprise, removing axe spider, which just getting to resolve Valkyrie Mist and even getting like 2 chips of points of damage, even if it doesn't kill them. Sometimes that can be enough just to set them back enough where they can't realistically get back in the game if it doesn't just outright kill them. So very curious to see where this lands kind of, you know, in the next couple events that we have coming up, because I think it is a very strong meta consideration. And with that, we have one last look at our Netherlands Grand Open top 8. Once again, these will be available on Eggman's website. I helped put some of these together, at least in the BSS dev format, so those should be up shortly at the time this goes live or shortly after. And then, of course, we are working on more set 2 lists getting up on the website, you know, soon as we can, sort of thing. So we appreciate your patience and look forward to more set 2 lists in the future. So with that, my friends, a lot more set 2 coverage to come. Again, I'm going down to Tulsa myself. I have no idea what I'm playing yet, but I am very excited to see all the summoners there. So with that, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.